Good evening, everybody. This is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore, and we're here with another of our virtual events. And, I should have asked you, Tommy, how to pronounce your last name before we went live. Swerdlow or Swerdlow or
Swerdlow, but a friend of mine is calling me Sverdlovsky a lot lately, and I'm thinking of changing it. Yeah,
I like that.
It's Swerdlow.
Swerdlow. Well,
Yeah.
it's a real pleasure to have you with us this evening on our little program here. Really enjoyed doing these virtual events, and the good people at Stark House, who I love that publisher. I love what they do, Greg, and I love all the, I got started out by reading all their reprints, all those wonderful
Right.
pulp and paperback original writers, and they're doing original fiction too. And this is a brand new book that Tommy wrote called Straight Dope. It's just been released recently. And it's really got it all. It's a classic LA novel. It's a classic dope novel. There's so many wonderful riffs in here. You really capture the surreal world of Los Angeles. It's an endless subject, isn't it, for writers?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I mean, and it's got that thing. I know it. I always think like I love it. I say I love it like someone who's lived there for almost 40 years but isn't from there does. And that's a certain way. I don't think you can love it the same way if you're from there. And I think you can love it the same way if you've lived there 5 years. But if you've lived there 4 decades and you're not from there, you get a certain, you sort of, and I'm a New Yorker, but I learned to sort of just go with LA, which you never do when you're growing up in New York. You think LA is ridiculous.
Let me just give you a brief little intro. Tommy Swerdlow, born 1962. Is an American actor and screenwriter, and I was looking at your credentials and stuff like that. You've done an amazing variety of cool and weird stuff. I love looking at it. Yeah, he's appeared in such films as Howard the Duck and Spaceballs. I mean, how cool is that? And also Wildlife.
Oh, that's a deep cut from the Cameron Crowe catalog.
Yeah, I mean, for my teen years, I think it came out in '84. I was 15. I remember seeing it. Oh man.
Yeah.
And then if that wasn't enough, Child's Play.
Yeah.
And Hamburger Hill, just for some variety.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that was just some of your acting.
Yeah, I quit. I mean, I stopped doing it. The last real acting I did was in this movie. I don't know if I told you about that in the interview, this movie, 1,000 Junkies, that I directed and co-wrote, and I'm in. But, I haven't acted. I think that 88 is Child's Play. So that's the last serious, but I kind of want to get back into it. It's just kind of not so easy.
Yeah. Well, then as a screenwriter, you've done a lot of cool stuff too. Cool Runnings, let's see, Little Giants, Bushwhacked, Snow Dogs, and The Grinch, the remake of The Grinch.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I did. My buddy who, I have a really good friend who I work for full-time as a screenwriter, which is a rare thing, almost like the studio days, who was the executive producer on Cool Runnings. And as I kind of went my dark way, he became the guy who invented the Minions and has an animation empire. So, I just did Puss in Boots 2 was the last thing I did. And now I'm working on, well, it's funny you didn't mention, because in the book, the whole Shrek thing is like a big, big thing in the book, and that's all real. So now my revenge is I get to write the donkey origin story. So that's my new gig.
That's cool though. It's funny. We're just talking about, my wife and I were talking about The Grinch, strangely, as one does, and what a masterpiece. The Boris Karloff, the whole thing was just so amazing.
Yeah.
How much
Chuck Jones. It was Chuck Jones, it was the guy who did Bugs Bunny. So it's like a sacred territory.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was working my way to talk about this, I guess it came out in 2017, the film 1,000 Junkies, right?
Yeah.
And what I was going to ask you was, it's funny, there's 1,000 Junkies, which you, let's see, you wrote or co-wrote, directed, and you star in. And
right.
And I understand we'll get into this in more detail, but it's quite a bit of autobiography in here.
Both of those particular pieces contain a lot of autobiography, and then There's a kind of, a fictional, I mean, the other one is it's kind of like a mutual autobiography, because the kid I co-wrote it with has his experience, which is actually different than mine. And then the other actor, there's three of us, who he met in rehab, who actually, we were all clean when we started. And this kid was a child actor named Blake Heron, and he passed away of an overdose after the movie came out, which was kind of like a little too, it wasn't the intention, and was tragic. And it's kind of, the movie's dedicated to him. But yeah, they're all autobiographical, but with always a device that kind of weaponizes the autobiography and doesn't make it straight memoir or straight documentary. You know what I mean? So it's kind of always a hybrid, but usually I'm always interested in sticking with stuff I know about.
Right.
Really know about.
Yeah. And it's Straight Dope. Love the title, by the way. What I was going to ask you was, did Thousand Junkies inform or provide the framework for some of the novel, or had you already written part of the novel? How did that work sequentially?
The movie's not really. What happened was, I met these two guys in an AA meeting, basically. Out of recovery, I met TJ and Blake. TJ's my buddy and my co-writer. And I got an idea for a short film based on our sort of dynamic. My story was not running around copying drugs with other dudes. Me and my ex-wife used together, and we were sort of like we weren't like Sid and Nancy, because we weren't that crazy or in that situation, but it was a male-female dynamic and a couple. These guys copped with dudes, you know what I mean? And this is about sort of three guys who are sort of, stuck together with their habits. And it's kind of like a junkie work day. It's just sun up to sundown. So that wasn't really that real. It was just, we had a thesis on dope, which was, they make these drug movies where guys are kind of hip, slick, and cool. And we were like, no, let's do it like we're the Little Rascals, like we're the most pathetic, bungling imbeciles you've ever met, because that's kind of what it's really like, you know what I mean? And we don't have any money, and like that. Straight Dope is that's more real from my life. Like there was one point where I was writing Shrek for real. I was like just on it, and DreamWorks didn't have a studio yet. They just had this building on the Universal lot. And I was up in the bathroom shooting Dope. And oh no, I was working on that in some meeting with like Katzenberg or whatever, and then went to a Pep Boys down in the hood to cop. And I always knew like that particular crazy, and it's like you mentioned Jerry Stahl, he kind of did the whole Alf and thing, but I always knew that juxtaposition between those two LAs. It just had, it just was interesting. I mean, like any juxtaposition, it was interesting. So, I understood that, but I have no noir experience. I'll tell you about it if you want. Why it came about was my kid had to read The Big Sleep. And I know nothing about, I never read a detective novel except the Hardy Boys when I was 7, and
Really?
I didn't know Chandler, I didn't know Hammett, I'd seen the Maltese Falcon. Yeah, and he couldn't read it. He couldn't read it. And this woman, Hani, who's a great friend of my ex-wife's and sort of like a second mother to him, said, "Oh, I'll read it for you." And she read it and said to me, "This is crap. I don't get this thing." It says my internet is unstable. Hold on. So I read it and I was like, not only do I think it's great, I think I can do it. Like I get it. Like I understand this rhythm. Like it makes sense to me. I think I can write like this. And so I really leaned on not Chandler, but that particular rhythm as a sort of mood and a way to keep returning to the same story, the same mood, the same feeling to get me through a novel, because I'd never written a novel and I was sort of, good at capturing what was going on with me in the moment, but to keep returning to the same story and the same mood, that rhythm really helped me. That noir style, the sentence structure, the feeling of it, how the chapters end, So It was incredibly helpful, but it was, luckily my kid is a bad reader. It wasn't 11th grade.
Did he finally kind of get hip to it and enjoy it after all, or no?
I don't know if he ever enjoyed Chandler, but he enjoyed he read my book, which shocked me, and he said, I really like the ending. He told me. So he's getting it secondhand. He's getting the reimagining of it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the crime novel, and in particular the kind of the Chandler, you mentioned Nathaniel West, and some other ones I was thinking of, like Horace McCoy, classic Hollywood. LA is such a bizarre, as you know, and have written beautifully about, surreal world, and it's so many different worlds cobbled together, or Dorothy B. Hughes is another one, In a Lonely Place. There's, it's got, the facade, the Sunshine Paradise facade.
Right.
And then it's got this bizarre kind of occult underbelly, I mean, LA and Hollywood has always been rife for cults.
Right. Like, remember, I mean, the Aldous Huxley, the Vedanta temple, that whole world of that, like people do come here to sort of do their thing with nobody watching in a way, you know what I mean? Or like, not like a New York, like the lack of culture is almost a freeing thing, you know what I mean? You get away from the company town part of it, the Hollywood.
Right. And then generations of, the most beautiful girls from the Midwest were arriving by bus at Hollywood and Vine, and trying to make their way. And of course, the reality was usually pretty dark and
yeah. I can't believe I'm spacing on his name right now. The guy wrote the Black Dahlia,
James Ellroy.
Yeah, James Ellroy. I mean, he got that down.
Absolutely. But I mean, can you, I don't want to give away too much of the book, but we let's get into it. Can you talk about the basic kind of setup, what starts the book? Like Bobby Zorn, who he is and who Angie is, and
I mean, Bobby Zorn is an like a screenwriter who had some success. Drugs took him out of the game. He's fallen on struggling times, and he's kind of scuffling, trying to like get a second chance, that's somewhat autobiographic. I had a writing partner who I wrote those movies with, and he got very sick, got brain cancer, and couldn't work anymore. And the weird thing about being a writing partnership in LA is you're sort of known as that. So I was trying to get back into it. So it was based on, real struggles I had. And then I just, got an idea from, in my head that this English ex-girlfriend, who was sort of someone based on someone real, but nothing like the character in the book, would call me to, say, can you find my, this is the invention, can you find this kid who was with she didn't even tell me, but it's, my sister died of an overdose, my beautiful sister. Can you come up here? I want you to find this kid who was with her when it happened. And that was just the invention. You know what I mean? Like, that's where it led.
She really wants the ring.
Right. She wants a ring, and it turns out to be all kinds of things. She doesn't even tell me at first, but, I understood, like, just like in the movie 1,000 Junkies, the drive to get dope just creates this incredible forward motion. And in this, the struggling and the need for money would just allow me to kind of cross lines that, normally I wouldn't cross or shouldn't have to cross, you know what I mean? But I needed the dough, you know what I mean? What does he say in Tootsie, Dustin? I needed the work or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
Why'd you do it? You know what I mean? So I go up there, and then the fun of it started to come to me, you know what I mean? That she's got this Scottish half brother, and, and it turns out to be all kinds of stuff with the art world. And then I used this, like in the movie, we go in South Central, a lot of people cop in North Hollywood from a lot of Latino guys. I did for a long time all my drug use in South Central with these old Black guys who I just knew incredibly well and could write. And so I brought them in because I loved how they sound, and I knew them, and I knew how to write them, you know what I mean? And so I kept using, and the kid is based on a real kid. Kyle is based on a real person. So I kept mixing, invention, fantasy, and reality. And the movie stuff is also based on a lot of reality, but then taken off the path a little bit, you know, just blown out a little bit. So
Right.
it's not memoir.
Right.
Right.
Now was by the time you kind of got clean yourself, was fentanyl on the scene yet, or in any meaningful way?
That's a good question. Because there's no doubt I would not be here if it were. You know what I mean? If that had been around during my time, no chance. You know what I mean? That was not part of the action.
All
I
the
got
synthetic opiates and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I got none of that. I mean, you know, you went to the methadone clinic, but I got clean in 2007. And, you know, that was before that. So I was luckily, you know, that was not part of my experience, because I think it seems pretty risky. I have a lot of friends who work in recovery now, and
Yeah.
it's crushing. You know, the
People are
stories are
just
so bad. They're just
dying
dropping,
all
you know?
over the
Yeah,
place.
yeah,
Yeah, it's really
yeah,
sad.
yeah, it is.
Really.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny. I was thinking about some of the Hollywood stuff, and we talked a little bit about Raymond Chandler. And have you heard that anecdote about how, when Chandler was working for Billy Wilder, that Billy Wilder was so difficult that he knocked Chandler off the wagon? Have you heard that story?
I just read this New York Times article, literally was sent to me 3 days ago by David, who I mentioned to you earlier, by my friend David Ritz, about their incredibly difficult working relationship and this complaining about each other and then them getting it together. Yeah, I just read that. I just heard that. Yeah.
Right. And in the film version of
Double Indemnity.
Double Indemnity, sure, yeah. Chandler appears, for you film buffs, he's sitting outside the office where Edward G. Robinson is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when it passes him, and that's Chandler sitting right there.
Right. I was saying to a friend, my friend, I said, whoever wrote that scene where McMurray's there talking about the anklet, how fast was I going? I'd say it was like going 45. I'd say you were doing 90. Why don't you get down off your motorcycle and write me a ticket? What if I put on, that whole exchange?
Yeah.
Whichever one of them wrote that, that's the jewel. That might be the best dialogue I've ever heard.
Yeah, no, there's some wonderfully Chandler-esque sort of, Chandler was an absolute master of giving you the whole temperature of a room and making a comment about, like if he'd walk into a bar, he could make one observation about, some ladies, sitting at the bar, and
Right.
you instantly knew the entire story.
Totally.
And
that's what I got reading. That's what excited me when I read it. Was it hit me that it was like, oh, it's a little poetry and it's a little rhythm, a little poetry and a little screenwriting. And I was like, you know what I mean? Because it is that the brevity of that is screenwriting description. You know what I mean? Because that's the real trick with screenwriting, is it's keeping it moving. And he just had it. So when I read, I picked up the same thing you did, where I was just like, oh, this is cool. This kind of reductive nature without it feeling like it's reducing anything, expansion by reduction.
there was a wonderful thing in the book that encapsulates a lot of things. If you'll indulge me, your character says, if you had heard me speaking out of context, I would have sounded like a mental patient in mid-episode. But this is what I had spent my entire adult life doing, talking about ridiculous, intricate, and imaginary circumstances like they were absolutely real. It was what 6-year-olds do. The only difference was, like, I got paid good money to do it, or at least I used to. I mean, what better summation of Hollywood screenwriting is that?
Right.
Yeah.
It's true.
Let's see, what can we get into here? I don't want to give away stuff, but you really get into the 12-step recovery world in a big way in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of give I don't get into sort of like, like I'm carrying the torch for that as some kind of way of working, but in terms of sort of the way it embodies itself in LA, how you meet people. I have that one meeting where I do that guy's speech, and it just, and sort of for me, how it kind of works as a very interesting turnstile between using and recovery. You know what I mean? Like it's a pretty it's a pretty thin line between the two, you know what I mean? And sort of how it works and yeah, and yeah, I do.
There's
Okay,
well,
it's true.
there's a certain language and you know, that I think people in a recovery would all recognize.
Yeah.
Little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And I thought it's interesting because you don't, the way I was looking at it, you weren't like breaking a bunch of traditions or anything. You were just showing us the that world, you know.
Oh, you mean the anonymity traditions,
Yeah,
like the
yeah, yeah.
actual AA traditions, like
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
busting people's anonymity? Yeah, no, I wasn't doing that. Not that I'm the
Averse
most,
to it.
sacred person about that stuff, but
Right.
I'm glad you're saying that because I mean, if you said the opposite, I would have just apologized and not said, no, I didn't,
But I thought it was pretty interesting because as a device, you know, and this is fairly early on in the book, Bobby is asked to share his story. And, you know, it's the old classic, what it was like, what happened,
Right,
what
right.
life is like now. And so he gives it to us. And I thought, what an effective way to deliver Bobby's backstory to the reader.
Right.
You know, I mean, I thought that was a really effective tool. It allowed you to go in there and give us a, you know, warts and all picture of where he was coming from.
Right, right. You're right. I got to you use war story as character development,
Yeah.
character backstory. Yeah. And then it works that, it's how I meet, yeah. And it's how I meet Kyle. So it somehow then pushes story forward. So you go, this retrospective look that then leads to an event that moves the story forward.
Right. And we were just talking about it with somebody, another writer, I can't remember recently, but the topic of, any really good detective story or a realistic crime story has several different layers to it. There's the plot that keeps the story, the momentum of the story going, but then there's the character story, and in this, you definitely show us that. I mean, Bobby, in kind of classic noir way, for him, that pitch, it's like, if I can just make that pitch that's going to, pick me up and take me out of this. That's a classic riff. But also, by him going on this kind of underworld journey, in some ways back into the druggy underworld where he comes from, it's a very threatening place for him.
Okay.
And so it's his own journey on top of the plot that he's hired, the kind of detective thing.
Right.
Is that something that just kind of came to you as you were writing the book? It seemed pretty intuitive the way the story was.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't do any outlining, and I just kind of used my sort of screenplay story gut to kind of which why it took a little while, and it was the first one. But yeah, that I knew. I knew about it. You know what I mean? I was just like, I'm going to go back into, I have that riff where I go back down into South Central, South LA, as they call it now. And it's like a return to the underworld. And I just knew I got a lot of experience on there. I've got something to say about it. I've got a unique take on it, which is funny. It's funny, David, when my friend David Ritzer, we did this event together, he said, I feel like what you did was use a lot of noir and detective tropes to just write a lot of poetry. And then a friend of mine who was listening called up and said to me, yeah, he said, that is what Chandler did. He said, I think Chandler did the same thing.
Totally. I mean, Chandler famously was not terribly concerned about his plots.
No, they're weird.
And somebody, the famous anecdote about, I think, I'm going to blow it, but somebody, while they were making the film version of The Big Sleep, wasn't it Faulkner? And anyway, they were trying to figure out a plot point, and they're like, I don't know, was the chauffeur or something. Let's ask Chandler. And he telegraphed back, don't know. he didn't know the plot point, and there were just all kinds of open ends. But that's not what you read Chandler for. You read him for the magic.
Yeah.
And he really did just kind of bleed all over the page, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm also sitting behind a Hammett.
There it is.
Another master.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us a little bit about what the hell a Ross procedure is? And I hopefully you didn't have to have one.
Um, actually, I did have one.
Oh, man.
A Ross procedure, it's funny, that's what Bobby is talking about when he tells his story about how he got clean. And it's just a heart procedure where they actually switch your valves, because your aortic valve, I think, is the really important one. So they put your pulmonary valve there just because they want a real valve of yours on the really important one. And then they put like a frozen, I think some people get a pig. I got a frozen one. So that was a piece of autobiography where I used something that happened in my life, and whatever, many times I did that, you know what I mean? But I figured, again, it just lives in me. It mattered to me, and I didn't have to write. I just had to tell what happened, So for me, when I just have to tell what happened, I feel like I'm probably in good shape.
Right.
As opposed to
Right.
like, let me make something up and see if it flies.
That's not a bad title, is it? The Ross procedure.
No, it's great. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
We'll see who gets there first to that title between me
Yeah,
and you.
right. Exactly. Yeah, and here's another, I wrote down another very Chandler description that I thought was beautifully done. She was better than gorgeous. She was battered to an imperfection that perfection can't touch. That's the way you describe the character in the book, Carla.
Yeah.
Carla, right?
Yeah, Carla. Yeah.
Yeah. What else can you tell us about the basic setup for the book? Without giving too much away.
That I'm asked to find a man who was with a woman who overdosed, who's the sister of an ex-girlfriend, and then I think she doesn't know that I have a little sort of subtle history with the girl, with her actual sister. And a lot of history with the guy who was there. So basically, and again, because you're right, it is recovery, because not only, I have that line in the book where I go, not only did I know him, she goes, someone told me you know him. And I go at the end, not only did I know him, I used to be a sponsor, you know what I mean? Which is that AA thing, sponsorship, where everyone in AA has someone who's sort of their guru, not guru, that's not what they are at all, but this person that they listen to, consult with, you know what I mean? And so I'm his sponsor. But really, and that just leads to a lot of unfolding events where what I'm told I'm looking for just keeps escalating, and other people keep telling me other things. And I think a lot of the device is I'm not a detective, I'm a screenwriter, you know what I mean? And I'm trying to sort of navigate all this. And luckily, people are just sending me places I kind of know about, you know what I mean? But you're right, the whole time all this is happening, I'm trying to sort of redeem this chip with Jeffrey Katzenberg, who's the only real character in the book. The only person whose name is real is the head of DreamWorks, Jeffrey Katzenberg, who I'm going to sort of like set it right with and get it all back with, you know what I mean? So these are the two worlds that are happening. I'm trying to sort of make right in this drug world, and as you said, go back in and sort of redeem or make sense, or I don't know what, but get in and get out without losing my life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And at the same time, I'm trying to get back this thing I lost, you know what I mean? From the drug world, which is my career. You know what I mean? So, that walks a line, there's a lot of truth in that, though the events are a little made up,
Right.
Yeah.
Now, did screenwriting come first for you? Or when you started writing, were you writing short stories, or do you have any other kind of previous novel attempts in the can?
I was always a poet.
Okay.
And that's really what I do. Like, that's really sort of like my most natural thing I always did. And I was the pot dealer in my high school, but I also was the valedictorian, even though I never went to class. And I wrote a poem at the high school graduation at this progressive school in New York. And so I was always able to make people feel me with words, you know what I mean? Specifically with poetry. And then I wrote, I wrote a novel that I really wish I had stuck with or I did stick with it. That I wish I had tried to get out there. When I did Hamburger Hill, I wrote a kind of every day we drive an hour there and an hour back. And I wrote, and longhand's hard for me because I have like all kinds of learning disabilities and handwriting stuff. But I wrote in a huge diary, 0600 hours. Like I did this kind of crazy war journal about the shooting of Hamburger Hill and the making of it and life in the Philippines and how crazy the Philippines was. And I went back and read it. It was pretty good for a 24-year-old, you know, it was pretty strong. But I just, you know, it's funny. I didn't, I think it helps when people envision themselves as things. And I never had a clear vision of myself as an actor, sort of, but never as a novelist, you know? So I didn't, like, I had friends, you know, who grew up. I have a friend who's a very successful playwright and movie writer, who when we were 15 in high school together, he knew he wanted to be a playwright. You know what I mean? He was like, this is who I am. I'm a playwright. I was not like that. I never even considered, just because it was so hard for me to read. I had so much dyslexia and so much stuff that being a novelist seemed outrageous, you know what I mean? But I realized I always could do it. Like I always could just write simply in a prose style, you know what I mean? And you know, I wrote some short stories, but then I hit screenwriting and I just got successful, you know, with Cool Runnings. I wrote an autobiographical screenplay about my father's Parkinson's, got CAA as an agent, this huge agency back when, you know, you could do that with a little sample.
Is that creative arts?
Yeah, creative artist. And then Cool Runnings it just was like blew up, you know what I mean? And that was like just people offering us jobs. And I had a partner who understood story very well. And I acted, you know, when I do the screenwriting, I act it a little bit and I write it, you know, I can hear it. And he understood story and kind of taught it to me. And we never stopped. I mean, I never looked back. I mean, I've been doing it 30 years, you know, I mean, I had a couple of rough spots, but I've written a lot of screenplays and done a lot of that work. And like you know, I mean, it's amazing thing about screenwriting, you get paid to do it. I mean, how many successful novelists are there? How many people can make a real living writing novels? Not a lot, man.
I think a lot of the general public would be shocked if they learned how little or how few even moderately successful novelists
Why they all
can
teach.
actually make a living out of it.
That's why they all teach.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
academia and writing is the 1-2 punch. If you're not going to work in Hollywood, you kind of have to do that. There aren't a lot of J.K. Rowlings or Philip Roth,
Right.
you know, people who make real, you know, who get rich, who make a really good living just selling books. It's tough, man.
Well, and it's also, you know, the whole publishing world has changed so radically in the last 20 years, let's say. You know, so of course, since the advent of the ebook and all that kind of stuff. But just, you know, whereas before it was like, okay, we got to crack the, you know, the big five in New York, you know, Random House, Penguin, Harper, blah, 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 Simon & Schuster, whatever. You know, the whole mid list was strangled out at some point. But now there are lots of good opportunities, you know. It's a weird time, but an interesting time.
Well, there are opportunities to get published.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, there's a lot of opportunities to get your book out there, just not a lot of opportunities to make loot.
To get paid for it, right?
Like, those are very different ambitions. You know, I'm going to support myself well doing this, and you know, I'm going to get a few people to read my book. I mean, the thing I'm learning about this, and that I really learned on the Junkie movie, and that the guy I work for is just a genius at, is, you know, marketing. I mean, getting eyes to what you're doing in this incredibly crowded, you know, war for people's attention is as important as being a good writer. You know, the hustle to market things correctly and somehow get into the conversation of what's happening that's an art. That's as big an art as writing.
And yeah, I think you realize, I would imagine, that you have a nanosecond to get their attention. And if you lose it, you know, that's why the opening page of a book is so important.
Right. And I didn't have I mean, I thought that was the best paragraph in the book, and it used to be in the middle. I was like, I was going to put it first.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay. So you know, you've written for Hollywood. I mean, Cool Runnings. Wow, what a cool it's become a cult classic, of course.
Yeah.
Um, have you done a lot of TV work as well, or is it mostly
I
long
have a
form?
show, I have a show on the air. Me and Michael did it for like 6 episodes in 2000 called Brutally Normal, which was a high school show. But the thing about TV is there's two things you can do in TV. You can create a show and write a pilot and try to get your show on, which I've done a good amount, but I've had one pilot made and then that other pilot made and the show played a little bit. Or you can work in a writer's room, and that's a whole different thing than I've ever done. I've never worked in a writer's room. I'm not sure I'd be particularly good at it, I have a very specific thing I do. I mean, I've been, successful, not hugely, but it's my thing. And I write. I think it'd be hard for me to just have people, not even just chopping up my ideas, but just to be in concert with everybody. I see writing as a pretty private thing. You know what I mean? So I haven't done that much TV. Cool Runnings is a funny story because we watched it, me and Michael, and we were like, we're like coming from the theater. We're like, we want to do Bergman movies. You know what I mean? And we watched Cool Runnings and thought what is this crap? You know what I mean? Or we didn't get it at all. And there's nothing I can do. I would have to do something insane to have anybody care about it compared to you're the dude who wrote Cool Runnings. People love that movie in the craziest way. It's incredible. I mean, I never would have expected a response to that movie like that, but it's been shocking. I mean, it just caught something, I guess,
Or some of your acting gigs. I mean, like Howard the Duck. Talk about a bizarro cult classic. That people love it. I mean, it's had a tremendous impact on culture.
I think Robert Downey Jr. had the part, and he got that Rodney Dangerfield movie Back to School, which is a bigger part. Movie. Yeah, so he had to pass on Back to School, and that opened that gig up, and I got it. That's a totally, and Child's Play too. But I mean, Cool Runnings is funny because first of all, we don't get to write that movie anymore. There's no way they can hire two white Jewish guys to write that movie. It just doesn't happen. That's not the world we live in anymore. You know what I mean? Oh, and a white director. I mean, there's no way. But Jamaicans love that movie. Like in Cape Cod, there are endless Jamaicans who come up for the summer to work. And I was up there one summer, and I met this Jamaican woman, and she gave me this hug, this incredible hug. And I was just she was like, you don't know what that movie means to us. I was like, really? I was like, you don't think I'm an idiot who got everything wrong, like some white schmo, So it's kind of great. It happened a long time ago. I mean, it was terrible when I couldn't get another job and I was having to go to people, but I wrote Cool Runnings. Isn't that worth anything? But now that I've, working a lot, it's fun to have written it.
Yeah, right. And so you started out acting and really first, right? And you were quite young when you started doing that, right?
I came to LA on my 21st birthday. I think there was probably one point where I said it in a draft of the book. I came on my 21st birthday and I did it. I didn't get how long life was. I also went to high school with Matthew Broderick. And so Matthew got successful so quickly. He did this play and then he got this Marty Ritt movie right out of high school. So it seemed like you were supposed to get successful so quick and so fast. And I came out here and I got leads in movies that fell through for various reasons. And I kind of I can't tell. I don't know if I got strung out and I just quit because of that. I got impatient or I was meant to write. I got to say the weird thing about acting is, first of all, I would end up writing a lot of my own dialogue for all the parts I did, but the identification with your face is really intense. I mean, I'm a writer, I think, my ideas, my thoughts, that's more interesting to me than just having sort of a relationship with the world via my face. You know what I mean? And I know that's not, it really is that, you know what I mean? It's like a headshot. Here's my face. That's my currency, or the way I sound, or, and there's, I just I like the currency of like, this is how I see the world. This is my rhythm. This is my language. This is my music. You know, that to me is, I feel more solid sort of going here. Judge me on that. Let it ride on that. You know what I mean?
Well,
In my face.
it's also a lot longer of a career path.
Right.
You think about athletes, their time is
Right.
fairly short.
And you can act for a while. It's also a lot harder. I mean, to be honest, I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, acting it's not easy, but it's not lonely. It's not, it's a lot easier. I mean, first of all, screenwriting is hard. That's why there's not a lot of good movies. They're very difficult. It's like, and there's a reason it's a golden age of television. TV is a little easier. You get a lot more time. You know what I mean? And you get to, like a good novel, like a perfect short story is a hard thing. You know what I mean? And a movie's got to be this kind of round, energetic ball in 2 hours. And, it's not easy, man. It's not easy. It's easier when you're a writer, director, and you have a vision, but writing sort of like a commercial good movie is a bitch, man.
Oh, bad. Gosh.
Yeah. It's
Now,
not easy.
have you thought about adapting Straight Dope for a film?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's kind of halfway there, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, I gotta really look into that. I got to Starkhouse. I got to the agent who got me to Starkhouse because there's a few people in Hollywood I know. One of them is John Landgraf, who runs FX, the network FX, who's, someone who likes my work. So I sent it over to them, and the woman who read it said, "It's not for us. I really like it. Do you have an agent? I think I have an agent who might respond to it." She sent me to this agent, this guy Jonathan Hagan, and he did like it, and he took me on, and that's how I got to Starkhouse through him. So TV has already gotten the book to happen, but I decided to wait till it was a book published and I could sort of hand it and go, here, this isn't a PDF, you know what I mean? This is like a published book, because like to give it to an actor, like if I'm, or decide how I'm going to go about it. But yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah. Has your agent, I realize we're kind of going all over the place here, but what the hell? Has your agent sold it to the foreign market? Because it seemed like the French would love it. The Germans would love this novel. They're always into Hollywood noir, so you should definitely get them to pitch it.
Okay, I will.
Yeah.
And also, I've just been reading my whole life, so I'm definitely going to do the audiobook because it sounds good out loud.
Well, who are some of your, you mentioned that you hadn't really read a whole lot of the classic crime stuff. Who are some of your influences, your writing influences?
I don't know. I'd say, Bob Dylan.
You mentioned Blood on the Tracks in here.
Right.
Yeah.
Allen Ginsberg, Bob Dylan, Henry Miller. I've been reading. I mean, I don't really have like people whose style. I mean, I've been reading a lot of Bellow lately, but I don't have any of that. One thing I don't have is, again, because reading was always a little tough for me, I don't have that thing where I've just read so much, where part of my writing is about how much I've read. Like when you read Bellow and Roth, like you're just like, Jesus Christ, these guys have read a lot, man. You know what I mean? And I'm sort of an autodidact, and and so and even this book, it ain't a hard read. You know what I mean? Like I try to make it so like, if you struggle with Faulkner, you won't struggle with me. You know what I mean? I mean, I love Faulkner. You know what I mean? I go slow, but I love it. But I don't have a lot of novel writers who I sort of leaned on, except Chandler in that sort of flash of lightning, because I got it. You know what I mean? But I read a bunch of them. Like when I got into it hard, but I stopped with him. I like the people you mentioned, it made me want to read whatever that woman's name you said, In a Lonely Place. I was like, I need to read that.
That's a great book.
Yeah.
Great book.
I like the other Nathaniel West book even better, The Miss Lonely Hearts.
Yeah.
I liked even better than Day of the Locust. So, I'm kind of all over the place, and movies, I probably have like world cinema stuff, a few more people I love and stuff, but I can't really say like, I mean, Miller, the joy and lunacy of Miller, like Walt Whitman gone sort of urban and prosy, that really knocked me out. When I first read him and I was young, I was like, oh man, this guy's blowing, man. You know, this guy's really blowing hard. And I really got a kick out of it. And it excited me to write. Like people who I'll read and I'll go, oh, I got to sit down and write now. Like I got to do it too, you know?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're drawing from all different sources
Yeah.
in different types of art, music,
Yeah.
film, of course. You know, we'll wrap it up here, but as I said, I love the title. You know, of course, it does double, triple duty. But have you read or have you heard of Art Pepper's memoir called Straight Life?
Of course, man. I've read
Yeah.
a lot of it. Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful book. And then the movie Straight Time. It was made of Edward Bunkers.
Love it. Love it. The Dustin movie.
Yeah.
My brother ran Dustin's company for a minute, and Dustin told, my brother's name was Ezra, he passed away, but told him that's my best part. That's my best performance ever. And I'll tell you a great story about Straight Time. I was in this crazy halfway house for comedians run by the Comedy Store. And I was in there with a guy named Sandy Barron, who
Wait,
Lenny.
stop. That's a show right there.
I did it. I've tried to pitch it many times. I'm going to have to go back and do it again. I thought I was going to do it. No, I believe me, I know that, man. It was incredible. So there was a guy named Sandy Barron who played Lenny on Broadway. And Dustin always felt guilty that, you know, Sandy played him off Broadway, and then Dustin does the Fosse movie. So he gives Barron a part in Straight Time to make up for it. In that thing where there's an early scene where there's a poker game and they get into a fight. And in the fake fight, Dustin breaks his jaw, like for real.
That. Yeah, I think I heard that. Yeah.
So he's giving him this favor. Like he's doing this incredible favor to the guy, you know, putting him in the movie, and then he breaks his jaw in the movie. And I think Sandy he's I'm not sure he's the guy. He's one of the guys. I think he's the guy who tells the story in Broadway, Danny Rose, who tells the Danny Rose story. He's one of the guys at the table, which is a movie I actually worked on.
Really?
Yeah. I used to work for Woody Allen. Yeah, so
Wow.
I got a lot of good stories.
Yeah, those the book that Straight Time is based on, No Beast So Fierce by Edward Bunker.
Yeah.
Really underworld classic. What a great book.
I'm gonna read it because I love that movie.
That's terrific, isn't it?
Oh, when he won't come out of when he's banging those diamond cases, and when they come out of a robbery and he says to Harry Dean, how was that? And Harry Dean Stanton goes with a big smile, scared the shit out of me. He says it like it's the greatest thing that ever happened. I just thought, that's it, man. That was so great. Yeah,
I sure miss Harry Dean, huh?
Yeah.
But he had quite a run.
He did. I think that's Gary Busey's first part too in that movie where he plays that junkie. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you feel? And then we'll close it up. How'd you feel yesterday when you heard the news about Charlie Watts? That really, for some reason, that really hit
Charlie Watts? I didn't hear any news. I'm in Mexico.
Charlie Watts passed away.
Really?
Yesterday.
Wow.
Sorry to break it to you on live Facebook.
No, I'm not the biggest Rolling Stones fan, but I love Charlie Watts.
Yeah, I know. I was like, wow, that really hurts. But
yeah, no, I mean, and especially I thought like I was seeing posters that they're gonna come like supposed to tour again. I mean, them without Charlie Watts, that seems,
yeah,
you know, you can replace the guitar players, but no Charlie Watts, man. I mean, come on.
Wow. Be hard to replace Keith, but Keith is going to outlive us all. We know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we're devolving into madness here, but it sure has been a lot of fun talking with you, Tommy.
You too, man.
I really enjoyed it. And everybody, get yourself a copy of this book, Straight Dope. We have copies here at the Poison Pen Bookstore. We'd be delighted to sell you one, but it's available everywhere. So go out and get yourself a copy. It's a lot of fun, classic Hollywood. It's got a little something for everyone. Dope, you know, noir, downward spiral, the whole thing.
And it's good LA. It's like the Thomas Guide. It's all over. It's good Los Angeles. Yeah. And listen, I appreciate you. You clearly really love this stuff. So you digging it is great, man. I really like that, man. I'm really happy about it.
Yeah. Do you have I'll go ahead and close it up, but do you have a second? Just stay on just for a moment.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful night.